So I did my research on Apple's famous founder, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was known for his risks on anything technology related. So he saw outside the box and envisioned things way beyond our technology capabilities of the time. This caused for a lot of opinions from the public and other people. He kind of stood alone in his envisions that he had for the future of technology, especially when creating Apple products. Basically, Apple was created in Steve Jobs' parents' basement in their garage. The first Apple computer was sold at a tag sale, so it wasn't anything that people really saw going anywhere, and people really didn't believe much in Steve Jobs at the time. His main goal was not only to produce more advanced technology, but technology that was simple and user friendly that the average person could use. So it wasn't anything yes, it was out of the box and it was something new and bigger and better than anything we've seen before, but he wanted it to be simple as where our mom and dad could use it and not be confused. It had to be as straightforward as possible while still implementing the new technology that he founded. It was important to note that the introduction of Apple and their iPod, the iPod wasn't the first MP3 player ever put on the market, but it was one of the most simpler forms of it, is why it blew everything else out of the water and became so popular. And then with the production of the iPod, Steve Jobs created the platform of iTunes, which made people come off of using illegal downloading platforms like LimeWire, and they were able to acquire their music in a more simpler space like iTunes, and everything was all together. He was famous for producing technology that simply connected the whole world. So one black market kind of project that he was interested in that he created was, he called it his blue box, so it was able to make free international calls. And in the 1970s, that was a really big thing, that people never really thought about it, reaching to other countries to have conversations, and it was very expensive, so rarely people did it. But he found a way to do it for free, which obviously wasn't legal, but he still sold some of those products. And this is just something that is interesting that I found online, and the President Obama said, Steve was among the greatest of American inventors, brave enough to think differently, bold enough to believe it could change the world, and talented enough to do it. So I think this speaks volumes as to what type of person Steve Jobs was. After watching the movie Her, I believe Steve Jobs would be very happy with the creation of Samantha. So Samantha was a lifelike computer capable of forming relationships that some people will never experience in a lifetime, or relationships that people just don't have time for to create, and she makes you feel like you could be connected to a piece of technology that's almost humanistic and lifelike, and you don't really see the difference besides the fact that it's not a physical person there. So Steve Jobs was very eccentric, and that's what made him so brilliant. So this is the type of invention I could see him personally enjoying. He loved his technology, and he didn't really do much outside of that. He was very eccentric, and he reminded me a lot of the main character of the movie Her. His name was Theodore, and he was very involved in video games and anything technology related. He wrote heartfelt letters for other people that needed help, creating love letters or something cute or romantic for a significant other. And it was funny because at the time he was divorced, going through a weird breakup, and he didn't have the sense of love in his life, but he was able to write all these heartfelt things for people who struggled and really had love but couldn't even come up with words to say, and he had the exact opposite. And this reminds me a lot of Steve Jobs, because Steve Jobs also got divorced at a young age and had relationship difficulties, and just really focused on technology as a whole. So Theodore was very into his video games, and he was an awkward person. He was, when Samantha asked him, are you an introvert or an extrovert, or are you antisocial, or you social, and he just really wasn't sure. He didn't want to classify himself as antisocial, but he was really in the middle. So if Steve Jobs were alive today, I could picture himself liking this invention of Samantha. I don't think he would find this creation bizarre, because it's everything he did was so outside of what we were seeing produced naturally in everyday world. So for him, like the everyday person would think this creation of Samantha is completely bizarre and unrealistic, but Steve Jobs would never think that because he always pushed the envelope. He always wanted to do bigger and better. And I think Samantha reminds me a lot of his invention of Siri, who is instilled in all Apple products, and everyone could use her as like a lifelike, reliable source. The difference is that like she's not capable of love. If you asked her if you love her, like if Siri loves you, she's not capable of love. But Samantha is. She's more advanced than Siri. So if Steve Jobs were alive today to keep advancing, he might be able to produce something similar to Samantha. Another thing we see is Siri is an Apple product, but HP came out with Cortana, and then Amazon produced Alexa. They're all things that you could talk to that talk back and guide you. So this is something I think Steve Jobs would love for people, and a pro of it is that it makes people that are in a low place in their life, like Theodore, find love and feel connected to a source. You know, like technology is really infamous for it, in a way, makes us disconnected, but it was made to make people feel connected, and I think that this is a new form of love that could be formed through this kind of technology. A huge con that I think Steve Jobs would find is that Samantha had the ability to fall out of love with Theodore, or she had multiple relationships on the side that Theodore found out about, and I think that made him obviously sad and upset, and I don't think Steve Jobs would want something that makes someone upset, but at the same time, it's realistic. Samantha is so realistic because that could happen in everyday life. Someone that you love could be cheating on you, could leave you. And then lastly, throughout the video, I took note of other like forms of art and digital technology used, and all of the filming was very geared towards the buildings, and many times he was going up these long elevators and you would see the city skyline in the back. I thought that was interesting. And then where he would travel through, they did a lot of like projection art where there was moving art being projected onto the wall. Advertisements were moving screens of visual art. It was a lot of like just advanced advertisements that I see like at bus stops or on the train station. So I thought this was interesting, and kind of credits to where we're moving today is more virtual advertising and virtual displays of art instead of like paper and 2D billboard type things. So I think this was also shown throughout the video and not just focused solely on Samantha and her abilities.